Hello again. It's been a few days since I was able to post a video, and it had been my intention over the last week to post one, possibly two or three videos commemorating Banned Books Week, which we've just finished. Uh, I have a lot to say about banned books, censored books, suppressed books. I have a lot of thoughts on those topics, and I still may yet do a video, a little late, but sometime this coming week. But all those plans for videos were stalled earlier in the week by some work requirements, and more recently, over the last 2 or 3 days, by a loss of power in internet service due to the after effects of Hurricane Helene here at the cabin in the woods. So I thought, since I've just gotten power back and internet service back, that instead of doing an Adventures in Book Hunting video, where I show you the interesting books I found out in my travels, or an Adventures in Reading video, where I talk about specific books that I think are important, thought-provoking, entertaining, or just, simply good reads. I'm going to try something a little new. Uh, this is going to be an adventure in storytelling. I've been inspired to tell a story, and let me make a disclaimer right now. This is a work of fiction that I'm about to tell you. This is not based on anything real. Anything resembling reality is a mere coincidence. This is just a fantastic tale from my own imagination. And to start this tale, let me just set the stage. There once was an empire that was made up of 7 kingdoms. And the empire was called Americanos Electros. And as I said, there were 7 smaller kingdoms that made up this empire. And one of the smaller ones that was pretty much always held in contempt by the emperor of the Empire Americanos Electricos was Appalachia Electricos. In any event, the emperor of this empire got word that an invasion of a far kingdom was imminent, a massive invasion. We'll call the place the Republic of Florida. And the Emperor of Americanos Electros decided that he was going to send his army, or at least part of his army, down to the Kingdom of Florida, because the Kingdom of Florida was offering great bounties for mercenaries to help them stave off this invasion. And so the emperor denuded his least liked kingdom, the kingdom he holds in contempt, Appalachia, and sent almost his entire army from that kingdom south, very far south, outside the bounds of the empire, by many hundreds of leagues, to get ahead of that invasion. And in exchange, the Kingdom of Florida was glad to pay in mountains of gold. They were desperate and desperately needed the help. As I said, Americanos held Appalachia in contempt, so they weren't particularly concerned at that point about any potential harm to Appalachia. Well, as it turned out, as the invasion of the Kingdom of Florida began, part of that invasion spilled north, and came into the unfortunate Kingdom of Appalachia. The empire was caught off guard. They were soon overwhelmed. And although the emperor held the Kingdom of Appalachia in contempt, he realized that if he let that kingdom go under, that the other kingdoms in the empire, the Kingdom of Ohio, the Kingdom of Kentucky, the Kingdom of Texas, the Kingdom of Tennessee, amongst the other kingdoms in the empire, that it would show signs of weakness, and that if the emperor could not protect this one kingdom out of the empire, then could they really be secure? And so the emperor mustered forces, particularly from the kingdoms of Ohio and Texas, and brought those forces to confront this new invasion of Appalachia. Now, in the Kingdom of Appalachia, they were in desperate straits. Much of that kingdom was overrun, and there were only pockets throughout that kingdom that were left intact. And refugees from the part that had been overwhelmed rushed to the parts that were intact, seeking water, food, other vital necessities. Refugees were overrunning the areas that were still under the Empire's control. But eventually, the Emperor was able to muster forces from the other kingdoms and intervene. But because his troops from the other kingdoms were not familiar with the lay of the land, they were not natives. They spoke with strange accents, and they treated the local populace fairly well. They didn't know the local populace, and they didn't know the local territory. And so they were able to eventually repel the invasion and restore entirely the Kingdom of Appalachia. But it took much longer than it would have if the Kingdom of Appalachia had its native troops, who knew the lay of the land, who knew the people, who knew the strong points and the weak points in their kingdom, and could have easily repelled that invasion. But alas, their troops were far, far to the south, far outside the bounds of the Empire. The Empire had no subjects in Florida. The Empire's only interest in Florida was the gold that it could provide. And foolishly, but as it became too late to recall those troops, the Emperor realized that it was going to cost him much more than the gold he was earning in Florida to repel this invasion. And it did. Almost twice as much, because of the emergency situation that arose, because of the difficulties that his other troops had in, one, reaching Appalachia, and then knowing how to repel an invasion and reconquer that lost territory. But as I said, the Empire was eventually successful. Most would say it took much longer than it should have, but they did succeed. And Appalachia was restored. And the refugees trickled back to their home territories. They had suffered loss, but most were just glad to be back home. Well, and the Emperor of Americanos Electros, being the short-sighted, self-centered, and unwise individual that he was, then decided that the way to recover his losses would be to increase the taxes on the people of Appalachia, and at the same time to flood them with propaganda, letting them know how much the Empire truly cared about the Kingdom of Appalachia, and the great lengths that it had gone to restore it, even though it was their fault that it had been lost in the first place. And many believed. Many were just happy to be back, to have the kingdom intact again. But there were a few who realized that it was the Empire that was the problem. It was not the invaders. Sure, the invaders did a lot of damage. The invaders were not good people. But the invaders would not have gotten nearly as far as they did if Appalachia could have mustered its own resources and repelled the invasion themselves. But as I said, the people who realized that were a distinct minority. But the few who did know, the few who realized what the Empire of Americanos Electros had done to them, held that in their minds and in their hearts. They did not forgive. They did not forget. And although, for the moment, there was not a lot they could do about it, there were ways they could resist. And they started the first simple, feeble steps towards that resistance. Oh well. I hope you enjoyed that little story. And once again, a disclaimer. Any resemblance to anything that you think might be to the facts of my story is a mere coincidence. This is a flight of fancy, my very own flight of fancy. After all, In our world, in the real world, would such a foolish decision have been made to strip a territory of vital resources, to send them far, far away for the promise of some gold? Hmm, not likely. Oh well. Any event, goodbye for now. I hope everyone who sees this is safe and secure, um, and enjoying a quiet, peaceful evening. Amen. That's all from the Book Hunter for now. I hope again to talk to you very, very soon. Good night.